Hello and welcome to Cookery with Mason Storm. In today's episode we'll be making some butternut squash soup. And we need 3 cloves of garlic, 1 tablespoon of oil, 1 cup of 10% cream, 1 tablespoon of curry powder, 1 tablespoon of butter, 3 potatoes, 2 apples, 1 onion, 2 liters of chicken stock, that's 2 boxes worth, and a decent sized squash. To begin with, we'll get our butternut squash here. Just going to cut off the bulb from the stem, cut it up again. What we want is nice flat pieces, and we're going to put those on our roasting pan. First, let's cut this bulb in half. There we go. Probably going to quarter them. Yeah. So it comes to my attention that some of our Australian viewers, when we made the pumpkin pie video, couldn't get the canned pumpkin. So butternut squash is very similar to pumpkin, and you can cook a pumpkin in the same way. What we're going to do here, this technique can be used to get the same type of pumpkin that you get out of like a can of pumpkin. So we take all the seeds out, we put them in a bowl here. You can fry or do something with the seeds. I've never really done that before, but I'm sure they're edible. I've done it with pumpkins before. Pumpkin seeds are okay. I don't know if it's necessarily worth the effort, but you might as well get the most you can out of your food, right? Otherwise, we just put it in the compost. Now, if you don't have a nice ice cream scoop like I do, you can use a regular spoon to get all this seeds out. Now, this ice cream scoop actually has a lot of history. It was from my mother's parents, who actually had like an ice cream bar or a milk bar way back in the day. The quality of this thing is phenomenal. As such, I think it would be hard to replace. Now that we've made all of our squash seedless, we'll transfer them to the roasting pan and cover them in oil. We'll cover liberally with salt and pepper, preferably a more coarse blend. Now that our squash is prepped, we'll get them into the oven. 375 degrees, approximately an hour. Although, depending on the size of your squash, it can be a bit quicker or take quite a bit longer. So the method of testing is to prick with a fork, and if it goes in all nice and soft, it's ready. Okay, moving on. We have our onion here. I've already peeled it, so I'm just going to cut it in half and then dice the onion. Now, the step of making this soup is going to be multi-process, where we do a few things and then let it cook for a while, then add a couple things and let it cook longer. But most of that's right at the start, so it's not too bad for making it. It's not like it's a whole day affair or anything. Just multiple steps. So now that we've got that all diced up, get the pot on the stove. We'll put the pot on medium-high heat, and then we can dump in our onions. There we go. Get all your onions in there, and then we'll add the oil and the butter. Now we're going to let this kind of cook and stir it semi-often for probably about 5 minutes. We want to get some color on these onions before we do anything else. So I'm just going to cut up the garlic now. Just doing a regular old cut. You can also just crush the onion if you want. It's because we're going to blend this all at the end anyway. If you don't have to go too crazy or too fancy with it. And we'll just keep stirring our onions here, making sure nothing's sticking to the bottom, because that's kind of something that can happen. So while we're letting that kind of cook away, we'll get our potatoes ready. The official recipe that this originally came from said to do the potatoes and the apples at the same time, but Mother determined that it was best to do the potatoes first and let them cook, and then do the apples later. So that's the way we're going to be doing it. So I'm just going to cut and dice up all these potatoes. Now, they don't have to be terribly small. Just try to keep them all kind of somewhat uniform. It doesn't take too long to cut them all up. But once we have them all ready and all kind of cubed up, we'll dump them all in the bowl here, and then we can add them to our soup now that we have some color on our onions anyway. And then we'll throw in our garlic as well. There we go. Stir it around. We're just going to do this for a couple minutes, probably about 2 minutes or so, get a little bit of color on the potatoes, and then we're going to add our soup stock to this. So now we'll pour that in nice and gently, and try not to spill all of it all over the counter like I just did. And use your wooden spoon and make sure nothing is stuck to the bottom of the pot. Then we'll cover it and proceed to the next step. So now we're just going to use a spoon and separate the flesh of the squash from the skin. It goes pretty easily. It doesn't take very long to do. And once we do that, we collect it all and just toss it into a bowl. Make sure you don't have any skin in there. Perfect. So here we have a little bit of a time skip. We're just going to wait 20 minutes before peeling the apples. And now that the time is skipped, let's peel our apples. Okay, just gonna cut them in quarters and then take out the centers, and then I'm going to proceed to kind of cube them up. Similar size to the way that we did our potatoes. Doesn't take very long to do. Now we're going to make sure that our potatoes are tender before putting the apples in. And the way that we're going to do that is we're going to take a wooden spoon and we're going to pull some of them out and then kind of mash it with a fork. If it kind of just goes all soft and creamy like this, it's ready. So we can add our apples in. There we go. We're just going to let that cook there for about 20 minutes. Then we're going to add our squash. Now our squash might come in a little bit lumpy, so you might have to break it up now, but eventually you'll be able to stir it into the soup and it will start to change color. And once it's all kind of mixed in, we'll put our lid on top. It takes a little bit of time, but there we go. And then we'll let it cook for another 20 minutes. Stirring occasionally, of course. Now we'll get out our immersion blender and we'll blend the soup. If you don't have an immersion blender, you can use a regular blender and just pour the soup in it and blend it. You can run it through a food processor to blend it. Another method would be to use a potato masher and just kind of mash it all up. And a lot of different ways to do it, but get it into like a soupy consistency. If it's still too chunky, you can run it through a strainer at the end as well. There we go. Now we can add our curry powder and our cream, salt and pepper, and we'll just kind of mix everything all up and let it kind of heat through, and our soup is ready. According to Mother, the way to eat this soup is with cheese and crusty bread. Also, this recipe works well with pumpkin if squash is not available. Let me know in the comments below what your thoughts are on butternut squash soup. And if you like this video, push like, and please subscribe if you want to see more content like this. And until next time, stay awesome.